to this computer. So I'm going to run through 6 things in this session. 6 things that I think probably good for everyone to know. They'll probably be across these 6. You'll probably know a few of them, right? But even if you do, maybe this can help to kind of just pad it out a little bit, your knowledge. So the 6 we're going to go through. There was a core algorithm update in May. So just released at the end of May. Well, during May, it's still rolling out. They haven't confirmed it's finishing. So we're going to go through that core algorithm and I guess explain what core Google algorithms are at the same time. We're then going to go through something called IndexNow, which isn't particularly new news. I think it's important for people to know. It's a way in which potentially the internet's going to go and how you're going to start getting your websites to be indexed. So I'll explain more about that. Then we're going to touch upon Google Analytics 4, which I'm sure will probably be the thing that most of you guys here know about. Google are deprecating Google Analytics 3 or Universal Analytics and start with Google Analytics 4. So we'll just touch upon that. We're then going to talk about the move from Google, changing from Google My Business to Google Business Profile. So a bit of a rebrand, but also a bit of a change in how it's going to be displayed and how you're going to be able to update your Google Business Profile listing. Then we're going to talk about an interesting bit of news that happened to Moz. I mean, you guys probably know about Moz. They're an SEO tool, right? Been around for such a long time, one of the originals. They had a really interesting thing happen to them last month where their website was taken down through somebody filing a DMCA request. We're going to run through that in a bit of detail because I think it's just an interesting story to know. And I think a lot of you probably don't know what DMCA is and how you can use it. So we'll go through that. Interstitials. So there was a bit of an update in Google Search Console where if you've got an interstitial, you can be penalized for it. So I'll jump into that. And then at the very end, I'm going to talk about a big advancement Google have had in AI content creation or AI language modeling, and a bit of an interesting story. So yeah, 6 things. So the May update, IndexNow, Google Analytics 4, the rebrand for Google My Business to Google Business Profile, Moz DMCA, the interstitials, and 7 Google language model thing at the end. So feel free to add comments as we go in the chat box. I'll probably look as we finish each section, so each of those 6 things, I'll probably have a look, see if there are any questions before moving on to the next one. Obviously, there's quite a lot to get through, and I can talk a little bit too much. So I'll probably wrap it up quite quickly, but we'll try to go through them. So I haven't put together a fancy presentation or anything like that. What I've essentially done is just brought up websites that are going to talk us through each of these. I thought that would just be the most effective way for doing this. And probably what it will show is, let me just share this, it's kind of how I do my research, right? Which I guess, is going to be probably as important for you guys. If you want to go away and start, learning about SEO, where are the good places to go? So actually one of the first places I start is a website called Search Engine Land. It covers quite a lot of areas, so SEO, PPC, lots of things. SEO is its real specialism, let's say. A lot of the kind of key writers in the SEO industry, they all write for Search Engine Land. So it's a good place to go. There's a mixture of like SEO news, but then articles, how to improve your SEO, could be anything, guides, webinars. So it's quite a nice place to go. So the first thing I want to talk about is Google's May 2020 core update. So you've probably heard of algorithm updates, right? So Google's algorithm, it's something crazy. It's got millions and millions of lines of code in it. And no one really knows how Google's algorithm works because the code base has just been built upon for so long. And there's so much AI in it that they don't even really know why some website ranks above another website. It's too complicated. You can't really reverse engineer it. It's a bit of a beast. Anyway, what they do is every now and again, though, they can make updates in the algorithm that will impact potentially how websites rank. Now, back in the olden days, the algorithms had cool names. The algorithm updates had cool names. So you had one called Panda, which targeted duplicate content. You had one called Penguin, which targeted links. They're the 2 most famous. And then there was a few updates after that. Now, the good thing about when algorithm updates used to happen like that, right, was if your website was impacted, now more often than not, your website went down, right? Because everyone did shady SEO tactics back in the day. I'll hold my hand up. My first companies, it used to work, right? It used to work. Now, Google, they used to tell you what it was about. So if you knew your rankings went down when an algorithm hit and the algorithm was about backlinks, all right, my backlinks are terrible. I need to fix them. I need to build better ones and disavow terrible ones. Or if it was about content, then I knew that I need to reduce my duplicate content, whatever it may be. Google these days aren't quite so, they don't quite tell us exactly what they change. Maybe they don't know, or they just hide it from us. And what they do then is they roll up all these changes they want to make to the algorithm, and they launch it all at once, and they call it a core update. So if you ever hear the phrase a core update, what it means is that they've just made changes to their algorithm, but they're not going to tell us what they are, but your website might be impacted. It's not great. So yeah, there's nothing I'm going to be able to tell you here in terms of how to fix it. But what I suppose you want to do is have a look to see if you were impacted. Now, the first thing to do is to look at the date range, because usually it's the first few days where if you're going to see impact your rankings, it's going to be the first few days after it rolls out, up to a couple of weeks. So on the May the 25th. So what is a good idea? Have a look at your clients' rankings, right? Go back, whether it's your own website, your clients, whatever, go back and have a look. And the place you want to look is, if you're using Hike, look at the average keyword ranking, because that's a pretty good indicator, right? And scroll through to where you've got the 25th of May and just see, like, do they go up or do they go down? Now you can see for this particular website, no change at all. And that will be the case, right, for 99% of websites out there. I don't know, give or take. But there will be some where actually you've been impacted, right? And it could be either way, right? Your rankings could go up or your rankings could go down. So what you want to do, go back, have a look at your average ranking. You might want to look at actually on a keyword by keyword basis. So you can do that at Hike as well. Go to your keyword ranking page and then inspect the actual individual keyword and have a look, and you'll see the graph for that individual keyword. But yeah, it was an update that happened on May the 25th. So have a look for that. Now, like I say, there's not really much you can do, right? Google have this post where they say what site owners should know about Google's core updates. Like I say, because they don't really tell us anything anymore. The only thing that they really say, I've kind of highlighted it down here, is there may be nothing wrong with pages that may perform less well in a core update. They haven't violated our webmaster guidelines, nor been subjected to a manual algorithm action. So really important to know, if your rankings drop, you've not been hit by a penalty. The word penalty is thrown around loads in SEO, right? You've not been penalized if your rankings have dropped during a core algorithm. Essentially what's happened is Google just thinks other content's better than yours. So don't think, what you don't want to do is thinking or communicating that if they have dropped, they've been hit by a penalty. That very rarely happens these days. You can be hit by penalties. They're very specific. You usually get a message in Google Search Console. But if your rankings have dropped because of one of these, it's just because other websites are better than yours. So you really want to take stock, right? So general rule of thumb, if your websites or your rankings haven't dropped, I just wouldn't really worry about it. I just go, Andy, it's great. We've had the update. I don't need to do anything to my rankings have stabilized or gone up, whatever. If your rankings have dropped, I think the only action to take is have a look at your website, look at the quality of your content. Now they say down here, focus on content, and they've got all these content and quality questions, which are all very general and vague, but you've got some quite specific ones. Do you provide original information? You're not copying content from elsewhere, right? Have you got insightful analysis or interesting information? Interesting. Does the content, let's have a look. Does the content have any easily verified factual errors? Making sure you've actually got you're talking about true stuff on there. Are there any spelling or stylistic issues? You want to think, right, Google is an algorithm. So essentially it says this down here, right? But let me just scroll down. I can't remember what it says. But just basically, here you go. It's important to understand that search engines like Google do not understand content the way human beings do. Instead, we look for signals that we can gather about content. So think about those signals. They're obvious things like incorrect spelling, incorrect facts, content that's been duplicated from other websites. That's what I'd look at. But again, only look at this if your website's been impacted or not. If you want a kind of an update on all Google's algorithm updates, search Google algorithm updates. You'll get a website like this, right? Where essentially it just lists all the algorithm updates. And you can line that with your keyword rankings, rises or drops over time. Okay, so that's the core update. It'd be interesting, actually. Feel free to leave a little message. Did anyone notice around, 25th of May or onwards, that their website or any website they're looking for either saw, boom, increase in rankings or a sudden drop in rankings? Because it would be interesting to kind of see, and maybe that's something that we can look at on our Facebook groups. If someone wants to say, hey, Andy, here's a website that, suffered can you have a look at it? Maybe we can do some free analysis and look over it. So yeah, feel free to drop a comment in the chat if you were impacted by this, or drop it on our Facebook page. Okay, cool. Now, IndexNow.org. So this is an interesting thing, right? If I just go back a little bit, the way in which Google crawls your websites, I don't think many site owners know this, right? But Google essentially has something called a crawl budget. If you've watched the Hike SEO Academy, you'll know what I'm talking about, which, by the way, you can find in Hike at the top. But Google has a crawl budget, right? Which basically means it has a certain amount of allowance to crawl your website ever so many times, right? Over a month, over a year, whatever it may be. Now, with a typical small business website, and we're all small businesses, Google will probably crawl your website once a month on average. Now, that might be quite shocking to some people, but what that essentially means is if you make SEO changes to your website, but Google isn't going to crawl your website for another 29 days, Google doesn't know about those changes. So you're not going to get any benefit. If you make any updates to any of your content, anything that Hike said that you've made changes to, if you've done it just after Google's crawled your website, Google might never know about it for like another month. And that's just so frustrating, right? It's so frustrating. You make these changes and actually you're not going to see the benefit of it. So that's the way in which Google works. Now, IndexNow is a completely different way of indexing the web. First thing to kind of say is that it's been created and it's got support from Bing and Yandex. Yandex being the Russian search engine. Hasn't got support from Google yet. But how it works is essentially when you make a change to your website, you ping the search engines to say, hey, look, you don't need to come and crawl my entire website because I've only made changes to this one page. I want you to know them right now. And the good thing about that then is that Bing will see that you've made that change to that one where those changes to those pages, Bing will go and index them. And so whatever ranking benefit you're going to get immediately because of it. It's such a better way of crawling the internet. Because what Bing are doing now is they don't have to worry about crawling your website every month. All they need to do is crawl it once, then just wait for you to ping it and say, made a change, come and index or come and crawl the page. So a couple of things to know about this. It's only being used at the moment, like I say, by Bing. I don't know what Shesnam is. Is that Czech Republic? Czech? I don't know. And then Yandex, right? We don't have that many customers in Russia. So that's not going to be something. Microsoft Bing is obviously a big search engine, nowhere near the size of Google, but still a big search engine. So it's worth implementing. Now you might go, okay, how do I implement IndexNow, right? How do I tell the search engines? How do I ping them when I made a change to my website? It's very difficult for you to do it on your website. The good news is more and more, I'll bring up this page now, more and more CMS platforms and plugins are starting to do it for you. So if I scroll down here, just to say like all of these plugins, so if you're on WordPress, you're pretty much sorted because the all-in-one WordPress SEO plugin, the Rank Math SEO plugin, and now also the Yoast plugin will do it for you. I think there's a setting that you have to set within them, but essentially now it's built in. So if you're on WordPress, you just need to go into those plugins and set it up. And then what that means is whenever you make a change to your webpage, they'll automatically ping those search engines. So Bing, all those guys, and your change will be indexed, a crawled index, which is brilliant, right? Now, Google hasn't come out and said that they're going to do it just yet. Frustration, but I don't know. Hopefully they will. I think if they get more adoption on this, but it's probably a good thing to do, especially if, you're in a country or your client gets traffic from Bing. So if you want to know where that is, like go into Google Analytics, look at your traffic sources, go into organic. You can then look to see the actual source. So the medium will be organic. The source will be whether it's Google or Bing or DuckDuckGo, whatever it may be. So it's a really cool thing. Other things, if you've got your word, if you built your website on Duda, they'll automatically do it. I think others are starting to implement it, but definitely worth looking into, especially those guys that are on WordPress. So yeah, cool. All right, let's have a quick look at the chats down here. Okay, so Colin Claps asked, how is that different from Google Search Console request index? So it's not. So for those that don't know, in Google Search Console, what you can do is go into Search Console and go, hey, for this page, I want to request it to be indexed. The problem with doing that, not a problem, but it's a manual process, right? You have to go into Google Search Console and you have to say request indexing, and then it'll go and do it. And it's actually quite a long time. You click the button, it takes about 2 minutes. It's a bit frustrating. The thing about IndexNow is at any one time, you can ping up to like 100,000 URLs. So the plugins will just automatically do it for you. Every time you make a change, they'll just ping the search engines that use IndexNow. So it's a much quicker, automated way of doing it. Okay, cool. So next one, Google Analytics 4. Right, this is a big one. And hopefully everyone here knows about Google Analytics, but I'm going to assume you don't, because I think it's probably the safest way to do it, right? Google Analytics, if you're using it at the moment, you're most likely, unless you've set up a website in the last few months, you're most likely using the previous version of Google Analytics 3, or Universal Analytics. Now, Google have decided that they're going to introduce a new iteration, Google Analytics 4, right? Okay, great, Google Analytics 4. I'll just upgrade to Google Analytics 4. It'll be fine. It's not quite that, well, it's not that quite as simple. The problem with what they're doing is they're going to deprecate Google Analytics 3 next July, right? So not this July coming up, July 2023. They're going to deprecate Google Analytics 3. But what that means is you're going to lose all of that data. So think about that. From July next year, if you set up GA4 now, it'll be collecting a year's worth of data. So then from July next year, when Google Analytics 3 is shut down, you'll be able to look in your Google Analytics 4, and the furthest you'll be able to go back and look at your Google Analytics data will be 1 year. So anything pre-now will be lost forever. So you'll never be able to look back at your 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, further back data. It'll be gone. Google are essentially wiping it all, which is absolutely crazy. I can only think the reason Google are doing it is because they've just got huge server costs. I mean, you can imagine that they can't, I guess, keep providing a level of data for everyone to store. So by doing this and just essentially wiping all data from 2022 backwards gone, they're going to save so much data space, you know, from their huge server farms and factories they've got, right? But it's crazy. This is a really important thing to know, that as it currently stands, that data is going to be gone. So the really important thing to do is to set up Google GA4 now. Because what that will mean is by the time next year rolls around, you'll at least have 1 year's worth of data to look back on, which is great. And, you know, the last few years have been such odd years in terms of, well, the pandemic, the war, everything that's been going on. They've been such strange years in terms of traffic. The trends have been all over the place anyway, but nevertheless. So really, really important to start thinking about moving your clients over to Google Analytics 4. Now, what Google have said is you can actually run them both in tandem for the minute. So you can add your Google Analytics 4 to your website, start collecting Google Analytics 4, but keep your previous, the one you've got at the minute, running, so you can still review all that content, all of that information and data. So yeah, here's just a very quick article from Google that's talking about introducing Google Analytics 4. It's a new property design for the future measurement. It's a bit of a confusing user interface, I'm not going to lie. It's very different to Google Analytics 3 and what we're all used to using, right? It's a completely different way of looking at it. I think what we'll probably do over the next, especially, well, definitely before next year, before it rolls out, is to have a course on the Academy that just walks people through using Google Analytics 4, because it is very different. It's one of those where actually, the more you get used to it, I think I'm guilty of this and everyone's guilty of it, don't really like change, especially with something as complicated as Google Analytics. I'm sure a lot of you guys have used Google Analytics. It took so long to get used to, right? And finally you get used to it, and now they've completely switched it up. It's completely different how you navigate to your traffic, etc. So yeah, now down here, they do have some really good guides with getting started with Google Analytics 4. And it is very, very simple. Next week, we're going to do a bit of a training session where we're going to migrate, well, we're going to use the Hype website, essentially. It's a bit on WordPress, so it's pretty easy, but it's very easy on the other platforms, showing how to install Google Analytics 4. So do keep an eye on our Facebook page where we're going to show a video and talk you through the process on WordPress. But if you see here, Google have got some really good guides. So for example here, option 3, add Google Analytics 4 to a website builder platform or CMS. Now, probably 90% of the people on this webinar will be will be using one of these. So you can see it all down here, all the platforms that are going to accept GA4 quite simply. Yeah, Drupal, Duda, Google Sites, Squarespace, Wix, WooCommerce, WordPress, GoDaddy, HubSpot with those, PrestaShop, Salesforce, Shopify. But it's not everyone, right? I'm sure there'll be some people here that are going, actually, my website's not listed on there. Now, the best thing you can do, right, if you want to learn how to install Google Analytics 4 on your website, is just Google it. It really is. So, I mean, if I was to go to Google now and search installing Google Analytics 4 on WordPress, there'll be loads of fantastic blogs. And it'll be like that really for any of these. Oh, actually, sorry, just noticed down here, they don't have the GID. So, oh, that's interesting, actually. So Shopify, and I'm sure there's probably some people here that are on Shopify, it's saying no. So what you want to do, go to Google and search how to connect Google Analytics 4 to Shopify. And again, there'll be guys that teach you on how to do that. So yeah, really, really important that. Really important to do it before the 23rd of July, I believe, of this year. Because then when it's next year, when it fully rolls out and they kill off the old one, you'll have a year's worth of data. Now, this is just kind of a set of analytics for a CMS hosted website, which I showed before. It's quite funny. The reaction across the industry has been probably what you guys have reacted and how I reacted, where just absolutely crazy. No one can really get their head around as to why Google have decided to just kill off all the old data. It just does seem an incredible decision, which is going to impact so many websites. So whether it's your own website or your clients' websites, it's a really important thing to start thinking about and start talking about, because it's going to have such a big impact next year once it's finally deprecated. So yeah, let's have a look at some people's reactions. So you can see here, actually, Aleda, she's a really good person to follow in the SEO industry, kind of reacting to how people are gonna feel about moving it. So a lot of people saying, what will you do? They'll move to use GA4, 44%. Some people say use GA4 along with another tool, 21%. And some people say ditch GA and use another tool, 33%. Now, I don't really have any recommendations. One of the questions you might ask is, what are other good analytics tools that you can use? Because Google Analytics is just a tool, right? It's a provider that provide a fantastic analytics platform, and it's free, right? Unless you go enterprise. That's why everyone uses it. That's why it's the de facto analytics choice, but you don't have to use it, right? You don't have to use it to get in Google's good books to rank, because Google don't use Google Analytics data in their search algorithms. They've said that many times. And there are other ones out there. I've used some in the past, but to be honest, I don't know everything. It'd be interesting, actually, if people do use, and that'd be interesting, please leave a comment on the chat. If you use another analytics platform, you don't use Google Analytics, and you love it or you think it's great, I think that'd be really good to share with the rest of the people here on the webinar. But I don't think there will be any. I'll be interested if there is someone here. Please do note down in the chat if you do use another analytics tool. So just to know that there are others out there that people can use, because people saying here ditch GA and use another tool, 33%. I don't know which ones they're going to use. But yeah, we got a chat message. So let's have a go down here. Okay, so let's have a look. So Robert said, I thought it would just stop recording data on July the 1st, and we would be able to access data from GA3 for at least some time. That's interesting, Rob. That wasn't my understanding when I read it. That could be the case. I guess, yeah, if that is the case, then great. At least you'll be able to access time. I guess what will be most important, though, is that you still won't be able to compare the data, right? Because GA4, you won't be able to go back more than a year's worth of time. You won't be able to see like 2 years data, 2 years worth of data. You won't be able to compare it. So you'll be able to maybe look at it side by side. It just says sometime on their support articles, so who knows how long. Okay, well then that's great, right? In case you can do it. But again, you won't be able to directly compare it. What would be really good, actually, and this is definitely a gap in the market, maybe there's going to be some software or some clever people out there which will enable you to upload your GA3 data in there, also connect your GA4 and be able to do some kind of comparison, so that you can still do those year-on-year comparisons over time. I think that's going to be really important. And then Dave Braun, it's making me think I should use another tool. Yeah, I think, wow, yeah, it's the thing, isn't it? Potentially, if there are ones out there that are good, that are free, and that provide as good an experience as Google Analytics have done in the past, then yeah, I'd love to know about them as well. Colin Clapp, what about if you set it up when it was first available? Yeah, so it's only just been available really in the last couple of months. So yeah, I think March is when it was first announced. So yeah, that's, even if you're doing it then, you're only going to have like a year and like 15 months worth of data by the time GA stops working. Paul, I wonder if most people use GA because it's free. Yeah, absolutely. It's free and it's a great tool. You know, it really is a good tool, and it gives you loads of information. The way that you can cut up and analyze, you know, the traffic is really, really good. Colin Clapp, I've had GA4 for over a year. Ah, okay, interesting. Oh, okay, so that would be over a year. Then you've got that data. It's just Google probably didn't announce the GA3 was being killed off until this March. That makes sense. Okay, I guess it was just, I guess when they announced it, people were just like, oh, right, well, we've got to do it now because we didn't realize GA3 data was going to be killed. So it just really emphasizes how important it is to set up GA4 now. And Rob, yeah, everyone didn't know since everyone said GA3 is ending. Yeah, exactly. So that was the crazy kind of realization. But well done, Colin, for setting it up before everyone else did. Because yeah, I don't think many people did. All right, cool. So I'm going to move on to the second part now. So let me just move over to this. Right. Okay. So next bit we're going to focus on now is Google My Business and its rebrand to Google Business Profile. So it's both quite, there's little and big changes happening here. So Google My Business, I mean, it's been known by many names in the past. Google Places, I remember Google Places. They're probably, if there's some people who've been here for a long time, they might remember some of the names before then. But yeah, Google My Business is being rebranded to Google Business Profile. And because of that, the actual Google My Business app is going to be shut down. Now, the Google My Business app, if you've used it, I'm sure most people here have used it. You have to set it up when you initially verify and set up your business, right? In Google. So when you get that verification, you set up from Google My Business. You can access it quite easily. You go to business.google.com and then essentially, hold on a sec, if that's a load. Okay, yeah, and then you've got it here. So this Google Business Profile Manager is being shut down. Now you might be thinking, well, how am I going to make changes to my Google Business Profile listing? Now, obviously, you can still do it through Hike. So first thing just to kind of say here is that none of the functionality within Hike is going to change. You're still going to be able to do everything that you can do to Google My Business. I'm going to call it Google My Business because I just get confused. So your Google My Business listing, you're still going to be able to make those changes through Hike. But what you're not going to be able to do is do it through this platform here. Instead, what Google are asking you to do is to do it actually within the Google search results themselves or within Google Maps. So if you go to Google, search your business name, and you've got your Google My Business listing on the right, you're going to be able to do everything from in there. Now, it does work quite well because you can do it now. So you can go in there and you can edit your address, you can change your phone number, you can change any of those details. But it's quite a small area. It's not, I'd say, the easiest to make changes to your listing. So yeah, that's kind of going to be the biggest change. The actual app's going, and you're actually going to have to make changes directly within the Google business listing profile, actually in the Google search results. That's where you're going to be making it. Shouldn't really impact too much in terms of what you can and can't change. It's just where you're making the change. We actually did, if you're interested to learn a little bit more, I did a video about this on the SEO for Startups group back in March. So head over to the SEO for Startups group. It's quite a short video, 7 minutes. It just talks through the entire thing, all the implications of it, how it's changing, what it will change for you. Yeah, so if you want to find out information, head over to there, but shouldn't be too much. Okay, next, onto this story. And this is really, really interesting. So we all know moz.com, a fantastic website, really good SEO tool. I've used it for years in the past, and a great website, right? Like, I think everyone here has probably read an article on the Moz SEO website. They've got, really good introductions to SEO, a really good blog. Now, leaving that to one side, there's something online called a DMCA request, whereas essentially, if we go to the website, we go to DMCA.com. Now, just a quick caveat, I've never used DMCA to, I've never submitted a request to DMCA, but essentially what it is it's a process or an organization. I don't really know how to phrase it, but if your content has been stolen, you can essentially make a request to DMCA for that content to be taken down. And then what will happen is, if that's, I don't know the exact process, but if it's accepted, then DMCA will ask search engines to remove the offending website from the search results, and they take it down, right? It's called a takedown. So here you can see, you can start a takedown, all of these things. So obviously it's really important because you don't want your content to be completely copied by someone. And there are lots of fraudsters out there who will, completely copy your website, copy your brands, try and trick people. What's really interesting though is a couple of months ago, back in May, somebody submitted a DMCA request to take down a bunch of websites, but they put Moz in there. And it was accepted, and the Moz website was completely removed from the Google search results. Now, this is such a crazy piece of information and news story, because the Moz website is such a huge website. It's such an important one. And it was actually part of, it actually shows you the request here. So on this website here, it can show you the DMCA copyright complaint to Google. So it's made on behalf of these guys to Google. And it's got here, the following websites distribute modified, cracked, and unauthorized versions of my app, Dr. Driving, which is an app which can only be found officially on Google Play. So these guys have an app, and they've basically said the following websites have got unauthorized versions of the app, and they've listed it. But if you look down here, now a lot of them make sense. You've kind of got, you've got Facebook, you've got some really big websites in here. But if we move down and we keep going, you've got moz.com, and it's got one URL, and they must have listed the homepage. And this was accepted, and Moz's homepage was taken down, which, huge impact for Moz, obviously. A real shame for those guys. And they had to get in touch with Google, and I think someone at Google did it. But I think what this does is highlights a process that maybe no one here has actually done. Actually, if someone has done it, please leave a message in the chat. If you've ever done a DMCA request to take down content from another website because they've stolen yours, please list it there. Or alternatively, have you had websites that have copied your content, and actually you'd be interested in perhaps using DMCA to get their content taken down? I've worked with clients in the past. Many years ago, I worked with a website. They sold e-commerce. They're online, so there's an e-commerce store, and someone essentially copied them, like took the code and just copied it. Back in days when things were a little bit simpler and things looked a little bit more simple. They copied the code, and they just had this duplicate website, and they started to outrank them. They started to get sales. Customers were getting really confused, saying they've had a really bad experience, but actually it was with this other company that had copied it. Now, in the end, what we did was we threatened with a DMCA request. So we didn't actually file a request for DMCA to have the website taken down, but we essentially wrote to them, there were solicitors involved, and said, it will go legal, we'll also request a DMCA. And that was part of the kind of the process, and that website then was taken down. The owners of that website decided to take it all down. So it is quite powerful, and you can see here just how powerful it can be in terms of getting websites taken down. So yeah, really important. I know there's a few things on the chat here. Oh, sorry, I've kind of moved forward. I think we've got a couple of questions here. Colin, can you still work on Google Business Profile and Hike? Yes, absolutely. So going back to the Google My Business, Google Business Profile, yeah, they updated a lot of their APIs, which meant we've had to do a lot of development work over the last couple of months. It's taken out a couple of developers almost to update the APIs, because Google have changed their APIs. Now, what it's meant is actually no difference really to you guys. You guys will just have the same functionality, but we've had to do loads of work behind the scenes to get it to even just work the same way. It's one of those annoying things as a SaaS company. But yes, you can still work. All the features are still working as normal. Okay. Bob Wild, I have website using my images without authorization. Yeah, so I don't know, having never done a DMCA request before, I don't know to what level of duplicate content, of someone stealing your content, would be a valid request. But what I would say is the first place to start is to reach out to the business itself, and threatening action is usually good enough, or it has been in my experience in the past. Debbie, quick question on taking down Google My Business profile. Will agencies be able to modify from the listing as well? Or how will agencies know who businesses they manage? I think as long as you still have the same level of access to the Google Business profile. So at the moment, right? So if we use height, for example, if you want to change anything on the Google Business profile for a client, you have to have the right level of access, which is like admin level access for their Google Business profile. I believe the same way, it will still work the same way within the Google search results. So as long as you're logged into an account that has that level of access, you'll still be able to make changes. You'll still be able to make changes to their listings. There was also talk at first that if you did have multiple locations in your account, the Google My Business app or Google Business Profile Manager app was going to be available to you for a little bit longer. So if you're a business with a single location, the app won't be available to you fairly soon. But if you have multiple locations, it will be available longer, but it won't be available forever. So yeah, just a little heads up there. Bob Wild, yes, I've used DMCA. Brilliant. Website using my photo. Works for all website. That's where not listed in China. So Bob, when you say it worked, does that mean that their website was removed from search results, or they removed the images? Yeah, if you can just expand on that, that'd be brilliant. Colin, you shared with me a few weeks ago. Yep, we have one site copying all our new content. Yeah, it's so frustrating. We're monitoring, considering using that site to help us. Google will, Bob, okay, DMCA, Google will respond, and was surprised that I did get an answer. Okay, great. Dave, seems like a good thing to look for would be good articles you wrote, and then things like infographics. Yeah, anywhere where a piece of content's been taken. And actually, there's a really good tool, because obviously you can't really know, right? You can't go, okay, this blog post, how, I don't know what websites have stolen it, right? So there is one website, it's a tool that I used to use, let me write on here, it's called Copyscape. Nice tool. So essentially what it does, you plug in your URLs, you have to sign up. It's not very expensive, it's quite cheap. I think you could do one for free here, right? So let's do the Hike website. This will be interesting doing something like this live. Okay, so you put in your website, click go, search for copies of your page on the web. So what Copyscape does is essentially it's just crawling the internet all the time and just grabbing all the content. Then you give it a URL and it'll bring back all the URLs it has in its index, in its database that has the same copy. So let's have a look. Being copied, cheap DIY SEO services, Firefly. Most of it, you see where the duplicate content is, it's just got the cookie banner. So there's nothing really to worry about that. Yeah, cookie banner. Yes, there's nothing too much there. But what you can do, plug in your own website, plug in some of your top blog posts, or you can sign up, buy some credits, and you can plug in your entire website, and it'll bring back anything that's found on the internet that uses your exact same content. So yeah, Copyscape, been around for donkeys, really, really good tool. I'd recommend anyone uses. Cool. And then, yeah, if you ever do want to file, if you go to dmca.com, there's loads of articles on how to file a DMCA takedown notice. Cool. Okay. So next. Oh, intrusive interstitials. Okay. So this is an interesting one. Interstitial is a really fancy word for a pop-up. So on a website, you'll often land on a lot of websites, and before you can, you land on the homepage, and before you can even read the content, go anywhere, you've got this massive pop-up saying, get 20% off our products or sign up to our newsletter. Now, a few years ago, Google brought out a penalty, a proper penalty, where if they deemed your website to have what they call an intrusive interstitial, e.g. an interstitial that's so big that you can't see the web content behind the interstitial, then that isn't a good user experience. And they disliked it so much that if they deem that your website has an intrusive interstitial, you won't rank as well. So you'll have a slight SEO penalty. It's not a huge one. You're not going to drop out of the index. You're not going to be blacklisted, but actually you won't rank as well. So what Google have rolled out in the last one, even though that actual update's been around for a long time, what they've rolled out is that you're going to, if your website falls foul of it now, you're going to get a notice in Google Search Console. So do keep an eye out for that. Worth logging into your Google Search Console to see if you've got a message. You will get a direct email from them if that's the case. But yeah, really important to know. But I think it's really important for anyone here that has got a pop-up that loads on someone's first visit. So that's the most important thing, right? It's on someone's first visit. So whether they land on the homepage or an internal page of blog posts, if they're displayed with an interstitial or pop-up, that means that they can't navigate behind it, they can't read the content, they have to close the pop-up in order to do anything, then that actually breaks Google's rules in terms of what's an allowed pop-up. So that's one thing to think about. One way to get around it is just to load it a little bit later. So when Google loads your web page, it will render the page using JavaScript, which takes around 5 to 6 seconds. So it will take a snapshot of your website at around 5 to 6 seconds, and it will deem whatever it sees on the page after that amount of time as the content of your page. Now, as long as your pop-up doesn't display until, let's say, 10 seconds after someone lands on the website, it can be as intrusive as it wants to be because Google won't know about it. So it's a bit of a way around it, to be honest. If you're going to have a pop-up, whether it's your own site, your clients, just make sure it doesn't load in the first like 5 to 6 seconds, because then there's a chance that Google, if it is intrusive, that Google will deem it as intrusive, and then your rankings are gonna, they could be impacted, right? So something to think about. A lot of websites don't, and we've done pop-ups in the past. We've always used the general rule of thumb of just make sure it loads 10 seconds after someone lands. And you know, from my own experience landing on websites, if they hit me with a pop-up too soon, hey, I don't know anything about your business, I don't know anything about your website, you're trying to get me to sign up to use a voucher, you're trying to get me to sign up to a newsletter, I don't know how good your website is. I don't think it makes sense to have a pop-up that pops up so quickly on the homepage. I think you should probably wait a while anyway. So I do agree with Google, and I think it does lead to a better user experience. So, hey, I kind of pat Google on the back for that one. But yeah, something to think about there. Here's just a post from someone who talked about on a Google Webmaster thread saying that they've seen it pop up in Google Search Console. So head over to Google Search Console, make sure you've not got any messages. Okay. Dave Braun, what about exit intent? So that's absolutely fine because essentially it's not loading as soon as someone loads on the page. It only loads when someone performs a certain action, right? And Google won't perform that action, or Google's crawler won't perform that action. So we've done exit intent pop-ups. Previously, we've tested them out on the website. So when someone's read the content, you know, their mouse scrolls like this to go to the close or close up here, or up here, should I say, it pops up then. Absolutely fine, because Google wouldn't be able to reenact those actions to be able to see it. And anyway, it wouldn't be in the first 5 seconds. So you're absolutely fine there, Dave. That won't have any impact on your SEO because Google won't know about it. Cool. No problem, Dave. Okay, and the final one. We've got 11 minutes left. This one's a bit of a wild card entry. I found it really interesting. Right, so everyone here, I'm sure, hopefully everyone's used the content wizard in Hike, where, you know, we can create page titles, meta descriptions, content briefs. But if you've not, you've probably heard of something called Jarvis or Copy.ai, or one of the many other content writing tools, right? These AI content writing tools. Now, what many people don't know is that all of those tools, including us, all use the same data provider. So something called OpenAI, a company developed by Sam Altman and Elon Musk, of all people. And essentially, they trained this algorithm. I'm getting quite technical here, so I hope I don't lose you all. We're 49 minutes in, so if you're still with me, well done. They trained an algorithm, right? An AI to understand language. So they fed it with like terabytes and terabytes of books, news articles, blogs, whatever it be. And the AI learned how to write like a human being. Now, if you've used those tools, including the Hike one, you know that they're great on the most part, but they are fallible. They do make mistakes. They don't always talk perfectly like a human. What's really interesting that's happened in the last couple of months, I think it was, no, I can't remember what it's announced, but Google have kind of brought out their own version of OpenAI's AI, but it's trained on like 10 times the amount of data that the OpenAI one is. And bear in mind, all these tools that we're all using, Jarvis, Hike, wherever, use this OpenAI. It's called GPT-3. Google have released their own one. And it's so good that this is a really interesting interview. That one of Google's engineers decided to have a conversation with it. And if you read the conversation, the Google engineer is absolutely convinced that the AI has consciousness. So we're getting kind of into real sci-fi here, but it's really good. I'll put this in the chat. If anyone's interested in reading this, it's really cool. But what it is a conversation between a Google engineer and the AI that Google develops. And it really does seem as though this AI, just what's creating this content, does seem incredibly clever and almost conscious, right? And what this means though is that once this becomes publicly available, people like Hike, Jarvis, and everyone can use it. The ability to create content at scale within software like us guys is going to be phenomenal. It's going to be absolutely phenomenal. If you read Lambda's the AI, and Lemoyne, I don't know how to really pronounce that, is the engineer. And interestingly, the engineer has, I think he's been fired from Google because he's talking about it so much and Google getting a bit frustrated. It's an interesting story. But you'll see that the level of content coming from the AI is so good that once this becomes available to software like us guys, copywriting is just going to be, is going to revolutionize it. It really is. If you're a content writer at the minute, you want to be looking into this because these are going to write some serious amount of content, and it's going to be it's just going to surpass, I guess, the ability for a human content writer to be able to write articles about something at speed, at scale. So yeah, really, really interesting article. I wanted to add it in there if people are interested in kind of AI and how it's going to impact SEO down the line. If you're using some of these other tools that uses AI to generate content, then have a read of this and you'll realize that the answers that these are given are a lot better than what you get out of Jarvis or Hike or any other equivalents on the market at the minute. But give it a year or so or a couple of years, that sort of stuff will be in the software. So scary times, but interesting nonetheless. So that's everything. Let me send it to everyone in the meeting. There you go. There's the link if anyone wants to read it. That concludes everything. So what we've gone through today, let me just do a real quick recap. We've gone through the May Google core algorithm update. Take away from that, go away, have a look at your rankings, look at average ranking, maybe look at some individual keywords, see if there was a decrease from May the 25th onwards. If there was an increase, brilliant. If it stayed flat, fine, nothing to do. If there was a decrease, then you'll want to be looking at the quality of your website, your SEO, your content. Think about some of those factors that we talked about at the beginning, spelling, facts that are on there, copied content, make sure it's all clean. IndexNow, the ability to be able to ping search engines. At the moment, useful, definitely worth setting up if you've got WordPress or if you use one of these other websites, get it set up so that you can start pinging Bing for now. If Google do roll it out, it's going to be really big. It's going to be a huge impact, and make sure that your website's being indexed and your changes being seen quickly. Google Analytics 4, got through that. That was good. Thanks for all the input, guys. So obviously the most important thing there is that you want to get it, if you haven't got it set up already, get it set up, because from next July, you're not going to be able to compare it against GA3 data. Google My Business moving over to Google Business Profile. Not a huge difference going to happen there, just really semantics almost, but you're going to lose the Google My Business application to be able to make changes, but Hike's going to still stay the same, and you can be able to make changes directly in the search results. DMCA, just an interesting story there about Moz. Hopefully that sheds some light for you guys. If you ever have a situation where you spot someone who's copied your content, you know at least a route to go down, whether to go down it or at least threaten it, that might help to get that content removed. Yeah, worth looking into that. Interstitial pop-up penalty. Penalty's been around for a while. But if you have been hit by a Google, it's going to start giving notices in Google Search Console. So have a look in there, see if you've got any messages. But if you do have a pop-up that you think does break the rules in the way that I explained, do look into that. And then the final one there, Lambda, which is Google's new content AI, let's call it, language model. Yeah, have a look into that if you want to have your mind blown and what can be achieved using AI at the minute. So that's everything. I've got some new messages. Great. Let's have a quick look down here. Trive Jarvis, prefer outranking. Is that another content tool, Bob? I've not heard of outranking. Dave, thanks, Andy. No worries. Connie Clapp, thank you. It was worth staying up out late. I'm glad. Yeah, you got to get to bed, Colin. Jimbo, thanks for the information. No worries. Rachel Rosen, thank you. No worries. Trish, good to have you here. Thank you so much. Thank you. And Paul, Rob, brilliant. I'm glad you've all enjoyed it. I think let's probably look to do one probably in a couple of months. I need to make sure there's enough good stuff for me to keep you entertained for another hour. Yeah, thank you all for joining. The recording I will send out tomorrow. Yeah, probably sometime tomorrow morning. So if you want to recap, hold fire till tomorrow morning. We'll get it out for you guys. And thank you everyone for joining. Have a great rest of your day, evening, and we'll catch up soon. Bye, everyone.